silent way. Oh, dusty place. Have they forgotten our sacred task? Oh, we've sworn to.
Authorities have imposed a mandatory fire
Even after that.
What's left of them?
Oh, I think I know why.
Okay. I think we are live.
I think so too.
So, guys, as you can see, we have been still in lockdown. So you can see on our hairs, we didn't. it's running pretty wild now.
Yeah, I haven't been to the. Well, this is something I was thinking about yesterday. Like how much importance and value there is in a barbershop.
Yes.
Like as much as you can try yourself, it's like wow, you really miss that. You cannot go to.
I
something
didn't
like
dare to yet, but I'm on the point in trying to cut my own hair.
Yeah.
Your daughter wants to
yeah,
cut my hair.
Maya wants to kind of make you bald. Me too. And I told her she can do it with me, but I think ball is fine.
Own ball. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe we should try. But yes, we are still in lockdown, and there are some. It's quite some riots going on here in Holland because of there's an evening clock, so that's why the stream is a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Because at 9 o'clock we need to be inside.
Yeah. And so that's why we will run towards 8, I think. Or at least that's for the Central European time. And today we have a very nice day, guys, because we're talking about debuting as an independent studio. So your first game on the market, like what's happening when you do that? What's going on? And for that, of course, we can tell you miles and miles of stories on this, but I thought it was nice to do this together with a, I would almost say like colleague in business. He also has a very nice studio,
and funny enough, released the game on the same date.
Yeah, that's another nice part. The games, or both games, Deliver Us the Moon and Pine, because that's the one. Matthijs van der Laar from Twirlbound is also with us to discuss Pine or share details on like how that went for them. And it was the same day, so that's interesting. We can maybe have a nice conversation about that.
Trying to find some similarities in the development cycle, but I also see some pros and some points that can be better. I imagine that he has a lot of like pointers what can be better if you begin a studio. I know we have a lot of those.
Yeah.
How we can do it better as a starting title. But very curious to see if there's a lot of similarities and what his opinion is about it and experience.
I have yet to try the chat because then I can say hi to a couple of people.
Yeah.
Can I get the chat?
Oh, we should have like a little
little
tablet here, right?
Yeah, no, that's the idea.
Next time.
Eventually. I get the chat here.
Do you have it?
Yes. Here we go. We'll see. Okay. So that's about it. Today we're going to talk. So we call it debut as an indie. Yeah, that's a nice one. And we're gonna just move through the history of both games, I think. But maybe before we move any further already, I think we should just. You have something to introduce today, or should we just announce our special guest and his
Just
game?
announced the special
Yeah?
guest. Yes.
We should show you guys. First, you're gonna get a trailer of Pine, so you know what we're talking about. Hey,
Look at
here
that.
we go.
So, welcome, Matthijs.
Hey, good afternoon in our case, I guess. Yeah.
Now, a pretty ambitious project, the trailer for Pine we just showed. Releasing on the same date. Just happy to have you here, man, and talk about releasing a debut game and the road to it.
Yeah, happy to be here as well. It's been a crazy ride for all of us, I think, and like you said, a lot of things that could go better, and that's I think always the most interesting stuff to talk about. So
Yeah. Maybe first to start with on the current day situation. How are you holding up in the whole pandemic as a game studio?
I definitely feel your hair struggles. It's been a few months for me as well. I'm not gonna cut my own hair. I already decided on that, but my wife was actually like, "Hey, I won't cut your hair either." And then after a few months, she was like, "Oh, I'll cut it." But now I think that's a bit too late for that. Like, I'm not gonna let her if she was really not that interested in the first place. I don't trust that.
Yeah, it's
But,
the same for me, man. I
Yeah.
think there's even joy now that they want to try to cut it. Like my daughter and my wife are now harassing me to cut it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I can't
But other
allow
than
it.
that, work is we're working from home right now. It definitely takes some getting used to. It's definitely not the same. I think all the small interactions and the small meetings that we usually have, that's what I'm missing most. But yeah, we're replacing that with a lot of calls and a lot more channels in our sort of Discord / Slack community vibe kind of things. So we're getting there, but it's a strange time to live in, especially with the curfew and with riots going on. Like you said, that's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah,
But
the Dutch have riots. That's something I wouldn't believe
Yeah.
us doing, but
exactly.
I saw it in the US coming, and I was like, yeah, okay, that's pretty weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's here. It was closer than expected.
I think
Exactly.
for our studio, it's somewhat the same. We have a couple of people. It's like some of them come to the office, and the ones that have a hard time to travel, for example, with public travel or stay at home carefully. That's also happening. So everything moves online.
We are fortunate enough to have enough space, so we say to the people that they need to feel comfortable with their choices. We can hold to all the measurements, so that's great. And then again, I think, and you have the same. We work with quite of a young group of people. They're easy to
true.
adapt on like all this kind of remote working. How is it with you? Is everybody kind of what are kind of the problems that you see with this remote working style?
I guess, like you said, there's a few people who didn't have everything ready at home. I was one of those, right? I had a sort of business laptop at home, which wasn't fit for all the high-end 3D stuff that I was supposed to be doing as well. So that also goes for interns, especially, right? You need to make sure that they have some tools and trust them with it. Obviously, with the right interns, you can trust them. But so I think, on a technical level, there's some trouble there. It's also, picking between the 50 million different chat software things that have come up, right? Zoom, Google Meet, Google Hangouts, Slack. We've tried everything. We're still not sure what works best, but there's always some technical issues. I just had a call and I said, can you hear me? And I couldn't believe that for a year I've been starting every call with, can you hear me? That I still don't have like a very set specific way to do it. But I think those are the basic issues that everyone's running into. On a more personal level, I don't think we have any big issues. We had this weird, I guess the same goes for you, right? Having launched in the same period, but it the lockdown started in that transition period from one game to another, and that's a bit strange because that's where all the ideas need to come up and where you need to have a lot of meetings and a lot of talks about everything that's happening. So that was definitely quite a struggle, I guess.
Yeah, that's likewise, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe talking a little bit about your history, because if we go, I find it interesting. When I was scrolling down Facebook one day, I saw, I think it was the iGet group. I was in a Facebook group, and I saw the first Principles of Pine come up there, and it was, of course, posted by you. And I remember seeing that first screenshot, and I was like, hey, that is interesting. Like, who is this, and what is he doing? And then it slowly started to gain traction for me. So I was like, hey, who is this guy? What's he doing? And suddenly it was a company and a game.
It charmed us instantly. I know.
Yeah.
So maybe the question is like, how did this whole thing start at Twirlbound and
The origins.
Yes.
Yeah, so a friend of me, Mark, who came from the same village as I did, we were in high school together. And in high school, we were playing games on our iPod Touch, and we were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to play your own game on here at some point? Then we started Googling, and we realized, hey, you can actually do that, right? You can make games yourself. That's how that sort of spark got ignited. And then from high school, we went into, iGET, which is the Breda University now, which has a really good game educational course. I think you have a lot of interns from there as well, right? Like it's
correct.
It's one of the better schools, I think. And we both went there together, actually. And in the second year of that education, we decided to start a company to be able to do like client work, and also, at some point develop our own games and release that under a more professional title. Because in high school, we also released a game together, but it had to go through Mark's dad because we weren't 18 yet, right? So that wasn't really professional. And we wanted to professionalize that, to start a company and, get the ball rolling on the administration side of things as well, so that when we would graduate, we wouldn't have to figure all that out immediately, but we would already be a bit comfortable with, having a company. And I guess we developed one game during high school, but that was like a mobile game. It's more of a test product for us, I guess. It was a puzzle game. It's not on the App Store anymore, but it was a really nice experience, to deliver something, realizing that indeed the last 20% is 80% of the work. And then we rolled into graduation phase of that education course, and we decided, let's set up something big for the graduation phase and see where that lands us, and see if we can make this into something that we can take out of school and into, the first big title for Twirlbound. And that graduation project was Pine, with all the principles and the art style and everything was done in a few months. And then, we took it from there, basically. So that's our origin.
Yeah, so being or not being 18 is something new for me. That was also that kind of that stood out very much, that you're already, I think, I wouldn't say 10, but let's say 9 years younger. And I was like, wow, he's fast, he's already understanding this. So
I mean, let's be honest, I'm extremely privileged as well, right? I have a very comfortable life. I live in a very comfortable country. But also, being able to set up a company while in school with all that safety around us. And I guess that same principle applied to the graduation project. We thought it's now or never, kind of. It's like, if we want to set up a big, ambitious project and we don't have the business sense that you do, for example, then the only chance to do it is doing it with as little risk as possible. And I think that was the graduation phase, or like the school phase that we were still in. Yeah. So that was a position of privilege, I would say.
I always say on schools, like, it's the best place to make a lot of mistakes without dealing with the consequence.
Exactly. And I guess we carried that out throughout the whole project of Pine, but indeed, like, being able to fail and it not mattering, that was great, especially because the school is pretty good. You can be kind of sure of a job if you just do your best and you have a nice graduation, right? So we thought, even if the graduation project just ends wrongly, we just go work somewhere and we'll see in the future how we're gonna tackle this. But we just took our chance and went for it, I guess.
Yeah.
So we mostly talk always about like the creative concept. So for you, in your case, Pine, But kind of starting a company is always kind of left out as this little thing.
Yeah,
Like, oh yeah, you
true.
need to do this little company thing. Are there things that were like something that you underestimated or overestimated by starting a company? Kind of the stuff that you need to do to be a proper company.
I guess not really, because we really leaned into it bit by bit, and like by doing it in the second year without having any product to sell or anything on the table, we could really easily have a look at the quarterly numbers. If the first thing we did was sell a product and we got $1 million profit, and we suddenly have to do our first tax return, that's going to be pretty daunting, I would say.
Yeah.
The first like 5 tax returns were close to nothing, right? And that was
Yeah.
nice because we could at least feel what it was like to get in that rhythm and see if we were disciplined enough to do it. And then I guess bit by bit everything became more complex, but we always took it step by step, and I think that really helped. So we really didn't bump into any big hurdles that I can imagine for you it was a bit different. It was a bit more complex from the start, right?
Yeah.
Just a little bit, but
We had one of the big challenges we had in the beginning is that we kind of did a project for a year, and we were already a company at that point, and figured out that after a year that project was a horror game. We didn't really want to debut with that, so and it felt like if we would, then it somehow didn't resemble our quality level or ambition.
Yeah.
And at that point, we did learn a couple of things, and I think we were more in search of what type of games we really want to make, and then we said like, oh well, maybe we should do a smaller project,
a 4-month project.
that turned out to be Deliver Us the Moon, and that was actually meant as a 4-month project. Turned out to be 4 years.
That
4 months.
maybe interesting is like, and I talk with Koen about it sometimes. It's like, when do you decide a project is worth more than 4 months? And why do we decided that, for example, our horror game, we needed to shelve for a second and maybe come back to it on later moments. What made you and the team decide to go with Pine and say, okay,
that's interesting.
This is it?
For me, that was the audience response pretty early on. We realized pretty quickly, and this became our sort of studio direction, I guess. And it's funny because you're one of the only studios around us that have the same, which is that even on a small scale, you can deliver something quite high end, right? You're still an indie, too many definitions of the word, but you can deliver something that not many indies can. And I think for us, that came out of our education, right? We were, the school's a AAA school, so we knew how to do those things.
Yeah.
Like open world and action adventure and like the bigger genres. So when we made that prototype of Pine, which was like a colorful, cartoony world, and you can just run around and stuff, we immediately noticed there's, out of all the projects that we've done, there seemed to be this automatic attraction to it. Like when you scroll past it, you see it, like Koen said. And when we were at a conference, we just attracted a lot of people because it just did that for us, I guess. And then we realized, the genre, which is an enormous genre, like action adventure, right? It's one of the biggest ones. We realized like if you can make games in this but keep the costs low and do it quite efficiently because you're a small team, there might be really something here, I guess, economically. So creatively we were all already hooked, right? Building a world and a fantasy world is always really fun, and everyone was having fun, but then we saw that there might be some money in this, which in the end it's a very business-like approach, but it's as important if you want to go on with it with the company, right? So this was a really important insight that we saw. Wow, this has some almost automatic attraction to people, and we should not underestimate this, I think.
Yeah, I think as I hear it, you decided not to take too many risks.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we did.
It's what I find funny is, and this is I think something very universal with game developers is. There's many people at home or wherever trying to think like, but my ideas are stupid, or I can't pull this off, or there's not many people that trust me with this or want to work with me. And it is very weird where if you just, and it has a little bit something to do with obsession, I think, is that if you want to go for it, and going for something is very wide, like that's such a wide principle that at some point you can say like, are you crazy? Why would you actually move on or go on, or didn't it fail? And the thing is that failure is something that you constantly get on your path, constantly.
Yeah. Maybe like a lot of people are afraid to execute, so they're sticking in the hypothesis in their heads. And maybe for you, like, how can you give people that are kind of stuck in that hypothesis, or like that thinking of doing something and then kind of talking themselves down in a negative way? What made you? Do you have a tip for them to say like, hey, if you really have a good idea, just start with this?
Well, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
It's like this is the weird thing. When we presented the game for the first time, we were not confident. I mean, it was scary as fuck. I have to, and it's never the right time.
No, I agree.
Sorry, Matthijs, you go.
No. As for tips, I mean, the only thing I can think of is learn how to prototype in any tool that you have ready for you, right? Like Unreal Engine has the blueprinting system, which is at least, programming is usually the most daunting thing for people who are more creative and have the ideas. So there's so many tools out there right now where you don't have to program anything, right? Like Hollow Knight, the famous game, is completely built in visual scripting, right, in Unity. So there's so many good examples of games that were just coming out of a prototype by creative people. So there's almost no excuse anymore not to try your ideas. It depends a bit, I guess. If you're writing a 7-novel fantasy story, then yeah, I'm not sure how you're gonna start on that, right?
Yeah.
You need a genre, you need some gameplay ideas, but I don't know. It's always wildly different. I do have the notion that ideas are very cheap. I always stick to that as well, and I think it's good to teach people that ideas are cheap, because everyone has an idea, right?
Yeah, we have a
My
trillion
neighbor
of
has
them,
an
I
idea
think.
and a birthday.
Yes.
Everyone is constantly screaming about ideas, but it's about all the small ideas of how you're going to execute it in the end, and all the little decisions that you have to make. It's like Koen says, you're failing on a daily basis. You have to make decisions. You have to make concessions every day just to get that idea out there. So I guess, yeah, don't stick too much to one idea and try things and prototype them before you are really sold on it yourself, I guess.
What is the development time if you look back on Pi now?
We officially started February 2016.
Yeah.
But before that, I lived with Mark and Timo, the art director, in a student home. So we talked a lot about it. We didn't really make stuff, but obviously that's pre-production in a way. So I guess 4 years is always a safe bet, because in October 2019 it was released. So I guess around 4 years is what I say usually.
What I usually think of those, because I think Deliver Us the Moon can be accumulated of like a 4-year stretch we did. But every year, or maybe even period, you can really divide those in sort of adventures you've done. Every moment or every period has its own theme, like, oh yeah, remember we were still in that office, and that's literally what you just said. You just iterate every time and the product changes and evolves. And
we say, could we do it faster? And we always say like, yeah, maybe we could do it faster, but it's actually not at the time. We couldn't do it faster. We needed to learn. We needed to break through all those failures that we encountered.
You don't know yet what the end will be like, right? You don't know the end product until you've seen it, I guess. I think Naughty Dog is famous for saying that as well. Like, you literally don't know what your game is until you're playing it on your PlayStation at home. Like, I agree. There's so many components to it, and I think being adaptive and flexible is worth more than anything. And it's never one idea that you're trying to execute. Like, when people say, I have an idea, how should I go about it? It's like, you don't have one idea when you make a game. You have a billion ideas, and you need to somehow bundle it in something that people want to play, I guess. Because it's about all the small things that you need to make.
Were there many people that said like, Matthijs, nah, man, you should stop. I mean, what are you doing? It's crazy.
Well,
get a normal job.
I heard only afterwards that, like you said, the little adventures, I think we have a lot of things in common there as well, right? As a project. Kickstarter being a big one.
Yeah.
We both did a Kickstarter of the same scale as well.
Successfully, that's even smaller percentage.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like those were all the stepping stones. So every time was like, okay, we started off with nothing coming out of graduation. We just did it sort of pro bono on our own merit, just trying to make a demo, right, for like half a year.
Yeah.
We did this because we won an award at the Unity Awards as well for best student projects. This was like a big initiative for us to, try to make something more out of it.
Yeah.
But then we went into the Kickstarter, and from there on, you go into the publisher, blah, blah, blah. But at each step, apparently my family afterwards said, like, we had no way you were going to make that, right? Like, nothing would have worked. It's like when you said you were going to get 100K from Kickstarter, we were like, sure. Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you go do that.
Yeah, it's
So,
true.
I don't know. I didn't get that backlash. I got a lot of support always, and the whole team did, I think, from their family members as well. But I can imagine, especially for my mom, for example, right, who's not into games that much, it's really hard to understand how big this market is and what a good idea is. Same as that she wasn't sure if I should go to iGet in Breda because she didn't know if I was good at making games, right? I didn't know either, but she had no notion of that. I think that goes for a lot of people around you when you were in this business.
Yeah, crazy. If you would ask someone today, you can better start a game company rather than a restaurant.
Yeah.
And we made a very good choice back then.
Yeah, as if we knew. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we did it. No.
Yeah, for sure.
Nah, interesting.
So was there a point, so you're developing, you're a very passionate man, and you think like, hey, everything is kind of rolling for you, especially in the beginning. It's kind of a fun phase.
Yeah.
But then things start to become difficult.
Well,
So-
it's the fresh, I always like to think it's the fresh, motivated optimism, and then you're getting some hammers in the face.
It's kind of like learning a new skill, so you're trying to juggle, and in the beginning it's kind of funny. Oh, you make some mistakes, and eventually you start to get a little good at it, and then it becomes very demotivating for some reason, and then you need to push through. Where was that moment where you felt for Pine like, hey, this is a little tough to push through. Like, we are pretty far. This is a little tough.
Yeah, I guess I've always seen the analogy of a valley, right? And it's your first year at the top, and it feels great, and then it starts to plummet, and you're in the bottom. You're like, why did we ever start this? And then slowly you climb up towards the end, and you think like, oh, maybe it's not too bad after all. But for me, I mean, it's always an up and down thing for me. The same for you guys probably. You have these periods in which everything is looking very sharp, and then the next day you come into work and it's like, should we stop like right now, or what should we do? But for me, that was very tied to financials in a way, because like I said, we had these stepping stone moments. Like we did a Kickstarter, and that feels amazing when you hit that, and when you get the money in your bank account, and it's like, we are untouchable, right? Let's go. But then after a while, that money is running out, and it's like, we got to start thinking about the next thing. And then, you go to a publisher that feels really safe and nice. And then you get creative struggles. So you're not making your milestones or whatever. So, but that was always tied to like, can we keep doing this? I never felt creatively that we had no way to go, because I think it's quite easy to make like quick and snap decisions, and often that turns out pretty well if you know your product like in a good way. But the financial side, that was the times where I was a bit more stressed, and I guess that's the fate of a small company, right, where you're sort of the business person / creative lead or something. Like it all comes together a bit on the financial side.
I'm not sure how fierce it has been for you, but when and it's not today. I mean, many companies are in a deep danger, but as much as the training of us goes, because the game industry hasn't become any less risky or something, but I remember those things where you're like, oh, so in 2 weeks everything's done, and what do we do now? And but then you somehow figure it out, and it's it also made me realize, and I think I had around 7 of the deepest moments where I was like, okay, so I'm batshit crazy to go on, but
You need to be.
and we still decided to move on, and that also made me realize I really want to be in that game industry, apparently.
It's like you can't help it almost, right? You find a way to power through, I feel. And it's always the worry for something that's in the distance. In this case, the financials. But by the time you get there, you've found a way. That's how you kind of wake up and suddenly realize, hey, I actually don't even remember that we struggled. We just powered through, and now we're here. So
Yeah, and it's also
it's like
maybe
magic.
the feeling of risk is also really hard to describe, because usually when for example, there's like an edge coming up, I always see it like a wild train that's on a rails and it's gonna go down fast. And at some point when you are not seeing that cliff anymore, and it's like you see a nice road again, and it's done, you pass that point and it's all fine, suddenly that risk sees like, so what was I stressing about? But before that moment, before that security, it's real. It's a real stress. It's a real threat.
For sure.
And
there is some sort of addiction to it.
There
I know
is.
We are quite drama queen. We love a little drama in our lives, I guess. So that's why we also like to take some risk, but also it needs to be calculated in a way.
Yeah.
We don't want to destroy or kind of hurt the people that we work with. So, but yes, there is some sort of addiction to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main difference between our companies that pretty early on, I mean, it's the two of you, right, who kind of started this together with your friend then.
Yeah.
But for us, it was 7 graduates who just powered on with the 7 of us. So we didn't have people around us that we, had to fire or something. We only had occasional interns. And that made the risk really low for us. And at every step of the way, right, even with Kickstarter, it's not a legal obligation to deliver if something goes horribly wrong. And that was really important for us to, be able to sleep, that we always push that risk away from us a little bit. And we just saw it as one big adventure. And if it didn't sell in the end, no worries. We had an amazing 4 years and we'll just do something else. Although I do think I'm saying that a bit easily. Like, I think I would, have a lot of trouble suddenly working somewhere. So maybe it's easy for me to talk because, it did sell well and we can continue. But
would it work on your conscience? Like let's say if you would have failed on delivering on Kickstarter, you can say like, oh man, I let all those people down, I mean, it's gonna hurt some way, I think.
Yeah, I remember always telling that story of the guy in Canada who did a Kickstarter for like 300K, and then he built a house with it and he ran off.
Man.
And there was nothing nobody could do because it was just that's the liability you have when backing a Kickstarter.
Really bad. If you think
Sorry?
about it. No, that's really
bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah, that's definitely bad, and I never wanted to be like that, but it always did comfort me in a sort of weird way, like I can still be alive and not have a finished product in the end, however sad it would be for everyone involved and all the backers, obviously. But it's that small thing in the background that keeps you, from getting anxiety disorders and stuff. So yeah.
Maybe another thing, and I saw Jordi talk about it, like we both pulled off Kickstarter, so Twirlbound and KeokeN. What I find interesting is that back then the Kickstarter amount is like, first of all, you're like surviving on nothing. Then you're like, whoa, we're actually getting a serious budget. And then afterwards, even going through a publisher, what I find interesting is that the whole feel of that responsibility, or in some sense, the numbers don't matter. It's the feeling is always the same.
The feeling never changes. So the only thing is the amount change. So, but the feeling is when first was a little bit amount of money was a lot, and now it feels exactly the same. And the stress that comes with it is actually the same as the beginning.
Yeah.
I think the responsibilities are just a whole lot larger.
Yeah, and I think maybe the happiest I've been is with the first 20K that we got from a governmental subsidy. It was 20K for 7 people and an office. It was barely anything. We got a few $100, but this was out of school. So for us, that felt like, whoa, we're getting a salary for something that we absolutely love doing.
Yeah,
you
can develop for a year.
A bit, but I mean, that shifts, for sure. The amounts shift and the responsibilities, but every time that same feeling of like, oh, we're in the clear, right? We can go on for a little bit more.
Yeah. So on Kickstarter, I mean, both landed a successful one. I think around the same amount. Us having a lot of luck with finding Gronk, the German YouTuber who pushed us through. Yeah. And I think your Kickstarter was just very well put? Like everything was, I think.
Well, I had a good teacher to learn from. I literally took a lot of details from your Kickstarter. Because it came from the same angle, same team size, stuff like that. Like even though it's a vastly different genre. So that's where we learned a lot from, and we were extremely lucky with the involvement of Kickstarter. We got in touch with them pretty early on, and they included us in all the newsletters. Like at some morning in the Kickstarter, we woke up and they put us in the general newsletter for like Kickstarter wide things. Well, that was insane. There was like 3 projects in that email, like some watering can, some some display thing, and then just Pine. It was so weird to see that in there, but that attracted a huge casual audience of people who just like backing things.
I have to kind of confess that I did a victory shout, like a victory dance when Pine hit the Kickstarter, and I was like, "Oh yes, god damn it!"
We've often said that like we need more companies like us, right? I think who are doing something slightly bigger and in the entertainment area as well. You
can say that's considerably risky to take such projects, and we could have also spent this on 5 different games.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, how are you on the idea of risk reward? Because for me, it turned out well, because a game like this is harder to make, but it also makes a bigger splash once it's out, right? Do you feel the same, or?
Yeah, I can't make small games. That's the problem. We tried.
So we tried to make something smaller, and it turned out to be bigger. So I think it has to do with our ambition, is that maybe not even thinking it in a business sense. And this is maybe a question I want to ask you as well, is we always needed to wear many hats. So it could be a creative hat, and that's kind of more of where our hearts lie. Yeah. But then again, we saw like, oh shit, we need to do the business side of things.
Oh yeah.
We need to take that way more serious to keep doing this.
Yeah.
How did you? But you have kind of a similar kind of role. Is you are creatively by heart, I guess, but then also you are good in business. How do you kind of be schizophrenic about that? So how do you do this?
Yeah, it's really weird, because it's super organic during a whole project, right? It's just whatever is necessary. I mean, you're a team of 7 with a few interns, and it's so easy to shift focus, left and right. That's, I think, one of the qualities you need if you're in indie game development. I don't consider myself good at business, like at all. I really, if you have a contract and you put it in front of my nose, I'll sign it immediately, because I'm really bad at like negotiating and all that stuff and looking for the right opportunities. But luckily I have people around me who helped me with that as well, and gave me tips. I mean, KeokeN as well, for example, we talked quite a bit during Pine and talked about the deals and all that stuff. That really helps. But yeah, in Pine, I mean, I did the writing, I did the UI, I did the sort of a lot of puzzle design as well. And then we did business. I think at some point it started to hurt me a bit, not personally, but the work that I did, like production, for example, like the planning on everything, I didn't have a sharp eye on anymore, because I was, too busy making stuff as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, for the new project as well, after we did a long retrospect, we decided like, okay, we need to make that a bit more clear cut, and not just take on whatever's in front of you and seems fun, but be a bit more decisive on I'm doing this amount of hours of business a week, and I'm doing the marketing here, and stuff like that. But I think it was doable, because Pine in general was chaos. I think if you want a bit more structure, then you need to structure that as well. Yeah, however many hats you're wearing.
I remember, and that's a moment I remember, and Jordy knows it as well, that with the Kickstarter, we already knew we were pushing it to something else. So after we know we should like invest in a little bit of hardware, a little bit of people, but also into travel to find another partner. And
we had a clear vision on that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But when I remember the moment when we signed with a publisher for the first time, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, why? Who is crazy enough to actually believe
in
us?
this bullshit?
We had the exact same thing, because we knew that Pine was going to be a hard sell, right? We're 7 guys, all under 30, with an open world action adventure game, fresh out of school. Why would anyone give us money to do this? And we actually had quite yeah, I mean, the game was pretty attractive, I guess, in that sense that it drew the attention of at least with every publisher we could talk. It wasn't a hard no anywhere.
Yeah.
But then we found someone who the first thing they said, which was Congregate, our eventual publisher,
Yeah.
the first thing they said is, "This is crazy, but who are we to keep you from trying it?" Right?
Yeah.
They hadn't done many premium games before. And we hadn't done many premium games, I guess, before. So it was kind of a mutual understanding, like we're both going to try this. Obviously, they had more publishing experience in general, but
Yeah.
I really liked that first conversation with them. That was about them understanding the risk instead of just thinking, yeah, the genre should sell well, so the expectations are really high, and how are you going to deliver? That was usually the question, but here it was like,
Yeah.
it might fail, we're okay with that, but if it does succeed, it's going to be really cool. So yeah, it's crazy still to me to this day that people, especially because in our case it was based on a mediocre demo and some writing, that based on that they just gave us the money to make this. But I'm very glad they did in the end. So
If I think about those moments, I have to give credits to those people that take that chance with you.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
it is, as much as we grow and we see all the details and all the quality improvements, at some point I have to also think like, so what if you're in that seat and you have to decide over someone else for their fate? That's, I have to say, that's a lot of credits to those that take that chance.
For sure.
Now it's way easier to see if the end product is there and it's rolling out like on a physical edition and a collector's edition and stuff to see what you're made of and what you can make with a team. So yes, especially when you debut, and I think that is something that we share in interest, is that beginning phase and somebody just believing that. It's a really special moment.
I remember there was someone, I think it was somewhere the head of Tesla or something visiting, and they saw like one of the newer screenshots and it's like, yeah, I would invest in this. And I said, okay, so I'm going to show you something else. And I showed him like a Michelin kind of doll, like something from 4 years ago. And I said, like, would you invest in this? Like, God no. And I said, well, that's the difference. I said, that's what it means to invest and to believe in someone, because that is the game.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy. And I think just indeed that feeling of someone believing in you is quite surreal, especially when it's your debut game. I think it's the only time you can have that feeling, because right now with a new project we're seeing that the doors open so much more easily, just because you did something right. You wear that medal of honor on your chest, like you made a game, you released it, which is a miracle in itself.
Correct. That's what I think
also got an amazing amount of respect for any game that comes out now, whatever it is, much more than I did before. Like I already liked games, but now just thinking about the struggles that we had and then applying that to some of the games that you see out there, it must be, it's just amazing what gets produced sometimes.
And do you see yourself, if you see like new indies popping up of new kind of ID software, can you see that spark moment where you say like, if I got the money right now, I would invest in that? Is that something easier for you to see?
Yeah, you see it sometimes, right? It's like, oh damn, there's something here. This person needs to get a chance. But now the nice thing is that now I have a network, a little bit at least, and I can tag some people who might actually be able to do something with it. So it also feels like giving back at least a little bit, I suppose. Trying to help people get out there, because some people have no idea how to get their game out there. That's also something you notice.
Yeah.
You by accident just stumble upon some game and it looks amazing. You're like, why isn't this much bigger than it is, right? And knowing how we did that with Pine, it's really cool to be able to help some people try and get their game out a bit more as well.
I do have to say that it doesn't happen of course there's examples that happen overnight, and I have to say that our Kickstarter was kind of an overnight success. And for the rest, it's just goddamn hard work.
It wasn't overnight at the last day of the Kickstarter. It was very stressful.
But I mean, that's hard work as well towards that goal, right? Towards the last day. I mean, Gronk, in your case, that was a really nice way to end it. But there's a reason you got a Gronk, right? I guess that's just hard work, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's shall we move forward to when you release it? I mean, first of all, there's like, you get set out, you have a publisher, after pitching it with the worst prototype you ever imagined, and then you're set out on that adventure and you have to finish it. So how do you stop that train? I mean, that's at some point you're so oiled in like, oh yeah, we can do this, and that's an awesome mechanic. I know that there's a list in like one of the peak moments of our production where I remember it was shoved in front of me and they said like, hey Koen, do you know that we have 60 mechanics? Yeah, I'm saying 60 mechanics. Like, really? Do we have 60 mechanics? And like, can it be with a little less maybe? Would that also work?
Maybe the question is like, how do you close, especially as a creative person? Like, we like to continue into the abyss of space, definitely. But there is a point where you need to close a project. Where did you start to kind of confine the ends of your game?
It's like I said, it's a constant struggle of making concessions and hard decisions and trying to find, like, if you're changing something, how are we going to solve it? It's just constant problem solving, I guess. One of the most glaring issues we had with Pine is that we had to sort of haphazardly make the seventh person in our team, he came from Ubisoft and he had a lot of experience with open world games, and he was a friend of ours from school, but he now had experience with open world and with like the biggest titles you can think of, and that was really valuable experience. But we didn't have that. We couldn't hire him before we had the publisher, so we had to sign on a sort of milestone basis and the design that we had without that knowledge. So we said, well, a quest system, I guess that's 3 months or something. And it was 15 months in the end, right? And that was one of the most glaring examples of just haphazardly having to go for something because you need to put something in a planning and in a budget, right?
Yeah.
And then when he came in, he was like, how on earth do you think this was going to be 3 months, right? And he designed the whole thing. It was like, okay, we're going to have to make hard decisions now, left and right, to make sure that we can do that quest system.
Yeah.
And that was a very good example, I think, of just making very tough decisions, sometimes based on some new information that comes in or just play testing it in general. And in Pine, we've been extremely lucky that, like, until January of the last year, so of 2019, we didn't really see it come together yet. That was only the moment where everything started to gel. We had so many systems left and right. And that could have gone wrong immensely. Like in January, we could have found out like, this is not fun at all. There's nothing here. What are we doing?
Yeah.
So I never want to do that again. That's what I'm sure of. So with the new game, we're taking a very different approach of, starting with a core like you shoot and then building that out, I guess. That's something that was scary in Pine, but I don't know. There's so many decisions to getting to the end, to like the end product. And then in the end, you just, like right now, there's so many things in Pine as we play it and also as we see the reviews, like, yeah, we totally agree. This should have been better. This should have been in but you just take a look behind the curtain and you'll know why that wasn't possible.
Yeah.
And then some people say just add it now, right? But you when you close off a project, it becomes a mess, right? You know this as well. Just the final, it's like you take a lighter and you burn the ends off so that it just all sort of wraps up and it's like
you burn the ends
no
off.
way to ever reattach that. And
Yeah.
it just becomes a tangled mess. So I don't know how you wrap it up. You have to just do it at some point. At some point, you're just so deep in it that you just have to close it off, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you deal with those people saying certain things and not
Wait,
really...
we're first having to release the game.
Oh, we need to release the game first.
Because that's an whole its own thing.
That's another thing.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah.
But it's true because when I remember when I realized those mechanics were in and we needed to make hard decisions, and man, there's a point where we had 22 people like smashing like whatever content into the game, and we almost called it like the gutter, like where you push all the content in there, then there was like a line where only programmers were, and then there was like a build line. Nobody touches that stuff. And I remember that we had to kind of like, someone was pushing something and then suddenly something broke on the other side. I'm like, well, this was fixed yesterday, and I remember Jordy saying like, so a build, when it's working, it works, right? And I was like, yeah, but there's no guarantee it works tomorrow. If it was in the first week, then the other week it could be completely broken again. Yeah.
Oh,
and it's crashed and burned at some places, and we were like, oh.
It made me crazy.
It
made me
made me
really crazy.
there's lists and lists, and even I think, and that's the period where we worked super hard, and wouldn't say I'm proud of it because we had a little crunch there, but still we were managing so many changes. Like even if they're starting in the first week, and we started to find all those issues, and on the Tuesday we find issues, and the Wednesday, and we kept changing and fixing, and at the end of the week we could have found another 100, but we fixed around 1,000 already, and that was mad, I can say.
And the endless list.
Yeah, the endless task manager.
Yes.
There's always something.
Did you have like big things that you had to change, like I guess mid-development? I mean, your situation changed mid-development, but
Yeah.
were there creatively any huge decisions that you had to make?
I think the biggest one we had is once we backed out of our publishing, or backed out, we were alone at some point in 2018.
Yeah.
We were independent again. We had our publishing rights back, and I remember releasing the game because it was necessary for us. We knew that there was a part that was still needed to be developed, and I think the creative decision there was we couldn't. It was really hard to still release with the same confidence, I think.
So we re-released the game with an open ending, of course. So for the people that are listening and don't know, so the open ending, there was a kind of a forced creative decision.
Yeah.
That really, it wasn't in the planning.
No.
We needed to.
Yeah. That was the hardest, I think, to kind of still feel good about that or something. And we were proud because at release day, I think that's the big, because that was the first time we released, the first time in 2018. That was, crazy. And it was good because it was very easy in a sense of like, there was no pressure. There was a lot of things to do, but we didn't have any like severe pressure like we've seen in Crunch, for example.
I think it also had to do that since we promised to everybody that worked for us and even were unfortunate to not work for us anymore, that we said we make sure that this game will see the light of day. So that was one of the things to say, even if it's unfinished, it needs to be released.
Yeah.
That's good.
And then the second part was like, okay, how do we finish this thing?
Yeah. Yeah, that was
crazy that you're probably one of the only studios in the world who can casually drop the phrase "the first time we released."
Yeah.
That's so strange.
Yeah, because maybe to explain it a little bit further is that eventually when we understood that was hard enough, we found another publisher and somewhat managed to unrelease the game and release it again with Pine actually on the same day, the 10th of October in 2019. That is, of course, insane. I mean, still, I'm like, wow, we did it again, this time with a publisher.
And an ending,
But maybe talking a little bit more about that day. I mean, it's the day of days, you know, you're thinking a lot of things, I think, on the day itself. You have a lot of expectancy from multiple angles, like even I was always thinking ahead in development, like people will maybe like it, and then we can do this and that and whatever.
You fantasize about
you
things.
fantasize, and then release day hits. How was that for you?
I had to work up to that with a therapist for like half a year. Not only just because of the release, right? This is like 4 years. You're the game that you love and that you want to release. But about a week later, I got married, so that was coming up as well.
Oh yeah.
And in that same week, we also had to move with our office because the building was going to get destroyed. So I knew like half a year in advance, like I'm gonna need some real guns to deal with this and like make sure so I got a therapist who really looked at my daily schedule and how to like get off the tension every day. But man, when that day hit, I don't know, the thing I was most afraid of is that I would be crying at my own wedding because we sold like 20 copies and my family would constantly ask like, hey, how did the release go, right? How did the thing go?
Yeah.
So luckily that didn't happen and we had a very good wedding, but this was, obviously it's a very, very tense day. You kind of don't like your wedding day, I suppose. You just barely realize what's happening on the day itself.
Yeah.
I remember some things of it, obviously of the wedding too, but you have pictures and stuff for that. But it all goes so fast, and before you know it, you go into work in the morning, you're like, this is it, and then before you know it, you're in some restaurant, which was still a thing back then, eating a hamburger and thinking, wow, we just closed off 4 years of our lives. We're going to go back into the office and see how that went, what the result is. And we were very fortunate, all of us. So your game and our game and the other Dutch game, we were here too, which was crazy that 3 Dutch games launched, but we were all fortunate enough to do well on that first day and stick to the trending games. But I don't know. It was the most daunting thing was all the other scenarios, I guess. I liked it immediately when I saw that it was gonna be all right. Like, it's gonna be fine. So yeah, it's a weird day. I wouldn't recommend it.
It's. I remember if I have to do the first one we did, that's where Paul and me were looking at each other and said, "Shit, people want an ending." And in some way, it was also good because it gave us an immediate goal. So I had multiple things in my head, like we want to maybe do other games or whatever, but the fact that we kind of said like, okay, so hopefully the community likes it and we might be able to turn this around in something else, or they demand a real ending. And that gave us such a combined goal that we also set out to do console, to make sure that it was localized. And that brought us all the way to the new release that had all that.
The good thing from that time was that people loved it so much, the whole experience, that they wanted more. So it felt short, they felt cheated because they're like, I'm in the middle of the stories, I'm so immersed, I want to play more. So that was kind of like our little thing to say, like, okay, people like it. So that is a positive point. The only thing is people feel cheated because of this open ending now.
Yeah,
that's nice. I mean, you also sort of got a test launch, right? Especially the first game is just so scary to launch because you don't have any experience, but you kind of did have that experience the second time around, which is amazing, I think.
Yeah, and I have to say with Wired, eventually as our publisher, that was also a very good choice because it did make, of course, we were finally finished with the entire game as it was intended, making sure that there were more languages, and that was even crazy. We even pulled off ray tracing in there. That was, if I have to say now, a very good choice because people consider our game as, I wouldn't say next gen immediately, but it's very possible looking like that with ray tracing and the newest technology. So it was a better release. Honestly, it was a better release than we did ourselves. So
that's awesome. Yeah, just that experience. I wish, if anything, to startups and people who are making their first game, I wish I could inject that experience of release into them just to help them out, right? Like you cannot replicate it, you cannot learn about it, you cannot read about it, you just need to do it. And also finishing in general, right? Like having the balls, I guess, to say this is it, we're not going to get more in than this, maybe in a patch, but this is what the first batch of people is going to see. Just that experience, you cannot tell someone, you just have to do it, I think.
It's maybe to see that, it's released, it's being bought, there's people coming in, and how I experienced it is like the first waves are like, that's everyone. So that can range from people that really hate your game or people that are super fan of it. And at some point that kind of dust settles and it's coming, like there's more people that are interested in the game that talk to you rather than the vast majority of gamers and
checking it out.
Really interesting. We have the exact opposite experience, actually.
That's nice. What did you experience?
Well, for us, we created quite a splash on launch, and the game was picked up by Steam pretty nicely. Like we were high in the global selling for a bit, and like I said, the colors of Pine and stuff, they seem to attract pretty easily. So we had a lot of positive vibes around the start, but now, like 15 months later, even our average rating is going down because we get a lot of people who get it in a sale, see it somewhere randomly, but they aren't in the context of the expectations that we try to set with Pine, right? because here we are with an action adventure open world game, and the more like this section on Pine is always an Nice nightmare because it's The Witcher 3 and Fallout and Assassin's Creed. So a lot of people discover it through that organically because Steam sort of aligned the chances you have to appear on those pages, even as an indie. So a lot of people have the wrong expectations, I suppose, and the whole story around launch, which was that we were just a team of 7 and it's a slightly smaller game, doesn't come across as well, it seems. So we're seeing more negativity now, also having released in the Asian markets, than we were at the start, actually. Like, it's strange. It's also a bit frustrating because the game didn't change, but the rating is going down. Like,
Yeah. No, that is strange because we did experience the other way around where because I saw a post by Thomas Salo, who released a Falconeer lately, another Dutch game, also by Wired, by the way. But I saw him post about like how you can have like 100 positive reviews and just one dragging you down, and it will stick on you for the rest of the week. And that's something I can kind of resemble myself with, where you're always, because you're not making the game to make people mad or something, you want to make people happy. So in some way I want to make that person happy, and I'm fed up that he's not happy in some way.
We had it in the beginning as well, where we had some negative, and always a negative energy. You want to try to change that or help those people to say like, hey, maybe you want to give a perspective, help them if they are stuck on a bug or something. And then you don't show too much of an interest for the positive ones because you think, oh, those are already fine. So we said in the beginning very fast, I said, okay, the negative comments, we need to address them, but don't forget the positive ones. So then we reacted on every positive one because I said they are making the game like we want to, and they're loving it. So how do you deal with kind of like the difference in negativity and which one took the overhand?
We always took the approach that if there's a very specific complaint or a bug, then we want to look at it. But if it's just somebody says, I don't like it, it's boring, that's totally fair. Like, you cannot like it, but we're not going to address them or try to comment on them because that can only, seem like you're trying to change somebody's opinion, and some people don't like that. So it's a very delicate thing. Like, we generally don't respond to any reviews unless it's a really... like if a review says it doesn't even have autosave, blah, 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 then we do put a comment in and we say, just for people who have, are thinking about buying in the future, just know that it does have autosave. Like, that's the only thing we can do. The review barely changes then, but at least we prevent fake news, I guess. But with all the positive ones and they often had some good feedback as well. So we did a few patches where we specifically targeted a Steam forum post about a certain feature or a certain complaint. And we said, we fixed literally this, like specifically for you. And that, that fell in really in great hands. Like, people really liked that, it seemed. Just seeing that you've listened, you're a small team, so you're able to listen to individual people. That was always really nice, and I think the engagement went up through those things. But negative ones, it's always a bit tricky. I don't like reading them. I don't like responding to them, and some of it is fair, and you have to accept it, right? Some people just don't like what you did, and that's fine. It's hard. I don't know.
When I saw, like, I think at some point we managed to get something like an 80-20 kind of setup where I saw, like, if that's gonna be continued, it would only scale up if it becomes more known and it becomes more played. So, nice. And I hoped it would scale up that way. So if we would, if you would sell 1,000 units, then if you would sell 10,000, I would say I hoped that the vision was still the same. And honestly, I have to say it is still that way for us. So
that's nice.
In some way, it magnified that scale in some way, and that means that we get a lot of positivity and a lot of good things, and of course the negative ones, some of them very fair, some of them I'm like, I think, and this was a discussion I think I had for the national paper even, where I think it has a little bit of importance for people to know who's behind it, because instead of course you can take a creative product on its own at some point, if you're starting to have expectancy, then knowing that not 500 people were behind it and the game's not $60 or even higher is important. You know that there's 7 people working their ass off, and that's why you don't have it perfectly balanced or super performance or whatever. There's not the latest tech in there, or I think it has a meaning.
Sure. Yeah, I think disappointment only comes from your expectations, right? And for Pine, we also realized the first time we went viral on Reddit was on the games Reddit, and we got torn to bits because it was like, the crappy version of Breath of the Wild, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I realized, like, if people know who's behind it, they're not going to be as harsh because they're going to see it in a completely different light. So I started screaming the number 7, which was our team size everywhere, like paid by 7 people. The 7 of us like this and this. The 7 of us give you Pine, blah, blah, blah. And that started to really help because especially in the first phase of release, every time there was a negative thing somewhere on the forum, somebody else would say, but it's only 7 people. And then suddenly the whole tone of the conversation shifted. So I completely agree. I think it's so nice if people are aware of who's making these games. And I think, for example, Thomas Sala with the Falconeer, like you just mentioned, he did that really well as well. Just making sure everyone understands this is a solo project, because that makes you think about it in a different way, I think.
Yeah, I guess it's also the association with what is an indie exactly. And a lot of people, they say it's some sort of visual pixelated game. And because we both went for a different visual direction, we wanted to scratch its realistic area. People tend to put us into this AAA corner. So, and like you said as well, like you are kind of being recommended next to Assassin's Creed.
Or Zelda.
That's pretty tough competition there.
It's not fair almost. And I mean, the price point is really important. As you said, it's not $60, right? Ours is $25. So it's definitely, with that, we really wanted to show, don't expect a AAA game. But even then, like, we have some people who played it for like 60 hours and then they say, I feel ripped off because it only has like 3 dungeons or something. Like, who are you kidding? Feel ripped off? It's
60
and you got it at a
hours.
sale, probably. Like, those things are annoying. Like, I don't know what to do with them other than just get a bit sad about that part of the community. But it's really important to shape the expectations. That
We
people
have, I think we have like a lot of complaints. One of them that stuck with me is that someone said like, wow, so I paid like $15 and it was just 25 hours. And it was like, 25 hours? What did you do in our game?
Not sure even how.
And then he was still like disappointed. And I was like, disappointed, man, 25 hours for $15? You can't compete with that with a movie or with a fucking week of movies.
Yeah.
Or cinema. And
Crazy.
but sometimes that's just also fine, I mean, sometimes people feel that way and, well, then never buy games again anymore or like this.
Yeah, for sure. I do have a question for you. What is indie?
Yeah.
Would you say it's indie?
CD Projekt says they're indie.
They are. I mean, well, no, they're like publicly traded.
Still, they call themselves independent.
Yeah.
So
I mean, when we aren't independent, technically, we had a publisher. We couldn't do it without them. So I don't know anymore.
So the thing is, some people say it in a visual direction, and it is kind of like how indie got portrayed some years ago. It's like, oh, this is like flat designs and stuff. And then also like these AAA publishers and developers, they started to make kind of indie-like games, but then with a bigger budget and a bigger team. You can also put it in a financial perspective, but this is very hard. Where's the line, you can put it on team size, like, oh, if the team is over this amount, then you are indie, or you can say you're an independent studio as you don't have a publisher. So, I think we are mostly in a direction that people call us triple indie, and I guess it's more they say it because the game looks not indie, and not specifically if it's commercially successful, or it's more of how they would see the visual and how the experience feels like. I think you have the same thing.
Yeah, but for us, the term indie, I actually explicitly didn't want to use indie at the start because it's such a muddy term and it doesn't really mean that much, very concretely put. But I realized that by omitting indie from our press presence, I guess, we also put Pine in a very different perspective. So people had that AAA and those expectations even much more, right? Which is kind of obvious in hindsight. So I started using indie again, and it became a lot friendlier overall. Like people understanding that we're a small company. So whatever we think it means, it's really important to understand what gamers think it means, or like the audience think it means.
Yeah, true. I think
it's about small teams indeed, and like having that creative freedom a bit more than in a very stagnated company like Ubisoft, for example, where you're just one little cogwheel in the whole spectrum of things.
I think the only reason we use indie is mainly to manage expectations, because our ambition isn't to become indie. Our ambition is to become as close as possible to AAA.
Yeah, we have always wanted to be.
Right?
Yeah, we always wanted to be next to like big games like Uncharted or Tomb Raider, big adventures. And I said that is the thing. But yes, we use indie as well, specifically for that reason, for not saying that we are a 10 to 15 people team, just to make it obvious, like, oh, this is probably smaller in whatever sense you kind of see that.
Yeah, and it's getting increasingly muddy because some larger teams also tend to focus on smaller or indie looking projects, I suppose, or like more artistically focused projects. Sometimes you see, for example, Fall Guys is a great example, right? Yeah. I thought, oh, cool, nice, a small team who just, made a little game and got super successful with it. And then it's like 240 people.
Yes, that's what I also figured out.
And it's like, that doesn't help the definition of it, because everyone thinks, and Devolver published it, right? The famous indie publisher. It's like, where is the line, and what are we even doing with this term anymore?
Or for example, Hades, it's the third installment of them, but the fact that they're such a small team, but they're extremely experienced, they came from like big companies with huge amount of years. And I'm like, so that's an indie game then, but they did have all the AAA experience, so that is weird.
Although for Supergiant, what I really love is that they really nailed their own processes and their team. Like the entire team from the start is still there, and that's a really good example of a team, 17 people I think it is, or 20, something like that, that just really loves to make games in a smaller group. And for me, that's kind of the definition of indie, I guess. They are really independent because all the profits from their games carry on the next game, but there's barely any other companies that do that, I think.
Yeah, I think for an independent studio now to be, that's what I always try to tell them, is if you want to stay independent, that's going to be really expensive.
Yeah, it's always impossible, it seems.
You got to know what you're doing if you if you decide that way.
Companies I know are all based on like early successes or hits, like Playdead in Copenhagen, right, with Limbo, and then Inside. That's obviously they can carry themselves because, they made Limbo. But starting now or having launched in 2019, like we did, I feel like it's almost impossible without a massive hit to really be or stay independent. Yeah, we worked from the start. There's this thing among independent developers, like the free spirits, I guess, who say like, I don't want a publisher, right? I want to decide everything for myself. But it's not as black and white as that anymore. Like in Pine, we decided everything for ourselves as well. We had all the rights to the IP and stuff. It's just the publisher helped us get it out there. So there's this connotation that you're not independent when you have somebody financing you, but it's definitely not the case anymore, I think.
Yeah, it's enabling, and that's also because making games has become, the tools have become rather easy. I wouldn't say easy, but it's become easier to make games.
Than back in the day, definitely.
And that's why you should kind of, and there are many things and aspects to do company or to be a developer or publisher that you can just have some help with. And it can also enable, and that's maybe for our case, is we're really always looking ahead in that path towards becoming so close to AAA. So I'm saying like processes. So any horror story we've heard on Crunch, and we've been through it ourselves, that's something we kind of want to, in that wave to the AAA, we want to change that with it. So if we can kind of mature the industry in that way, while actually getting closer and closer to the end results, because I am sure that the end results eventually will, as a product, will not differ too much, but the team size, the product, the project size, the scope, that will massively be different.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because if you say towards AAA, are you mainly focusing on that team size? Like you just want more manpower to eventually make bigger games, or
We're
No.
actually very careful on growing at places where we think we need some help, not
Gradually.
where we think like, oh, let's smash another 10 people against it to make
yeah.
it nicer or something.
Maybe that will be the beginner mistake. So maybe in the past we did throw people at it to say like, maybe we need more people that solve it with persons or with people or disciplines. And I don't believe that our vision for being like this AAA experience evolves 200 people anymore.
No.
Not at all.
Definitely not. It also doesn't involve longer development times,
No.
because that would also be the same thing then. I mean,
so
Do
you're
you-
saying
do you-
mainly like going for AAA means your games you want to have AAA games, right? And not necessarily
Exactly.
the studio of
Yes.
yeah,
that we
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And I see many angles where that's possible already, and it's just also I don't know, that is enjoyable because I've always enjoyed those games, and now once we're starting to make them,
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
talked about that before, but it's cool when you look at Delivers the Moon. You can imagine that a lot of AAA companies are shitting their pants. Like, this is also possible, I guess, and this was probably a shit ton cheaper than what we did for this and this game, right? And I think that's the power of what we're doing here.
yeah, it wasn't the reason. So like, let's show all those companies that we can do this in
Yeah,
another
yeah.
way. It's more or less like we can
Yeah.
because we're doing it.
But yeah,
And we
and I
wanted
think
it.
a lot of AAA companies are not aware that that's already possible.
Yeah,
And
Oh,
with
yeah.
the new Unreal Engine coming out with that nanite technology,
Yeah.
indies really have a chance to show like that you don't need 250 people to build a beautiful like AAA feeling. And I guess Hellblade, Ninja Theory,
Yeah.
they kind of proved it. That
Yeah.
was completely AAA. That was the reverse Fall Guy story for me, right? Realizing that this is not a huge team, but it's actually a pretty small
So-
and dense team.
How do you see the future of Twirlbound? Do you see something new in development or maybe the games that you're making?
Well, like I said, we had a long chat after Pine, like a big retrospect on every aspect of it, and we needed to sort of choose a direction because we could either go a lot smaller and try to do it with the same team, because we all agreed that making another Pine with this team size that we had is that's not doable. We had too much luck, right, finishing that off, and it's still by far not a perfect game. So if we would do it again, we would make something smaller and more focused, or we try to stick within the genre and accept and appreciate that we need to expand it a little bit, right? Need more help from different sides. And we chose the latter because you kind of want to stick to what you know a little bit, right?
Yeah.
If we would have started a racing game now, that would have been a bad decision. Like just pulling the reset button on everything and, everything you've learned and tried and built, all the tools that you made would have been useless. So, and on top of that, like I said before, we realized that we are in sort of an indie niche where we can, like not many indies can, we can build 3D open world games, and that's quite a nice way to show yourself, I guess, in the indie world. So, yeah, as a direction, we pretty soon we just discovered, okay, we want to keep building 3D open world games because we can do that, and not many people do that. But there's so much wiggle room there. So let's focus on the strengths that made Pine good and try to remove all the things that gave it friction.
yeah,
In this case, that was in Pine, we had a lot of abstract big systems that were really hard to make and to debug and to test and see the results of. So we're getting rid of that layer and focusing more on a sort of playful core and focus on the core mechanics there, which sounds weird if you say it out loud because everyone should do that, but that's how the project went in the case of Pine. So we're
Yeah.
doing that more diligently now and just but continuing on that same path in the same genre. So we want to expand it a little bit, at least for this project, and get some more help.
nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you're not planning to leave, as I hear.
You say for sure.
Yeah, it's what Paul and me can say about it for now is that, and that's what I'm very proud of, like the business we've done back in 2019, and that's something I realize is really, really hard if you want to start a company now or become an indie or looking for partners. Of course, there's like many opportunities on online events, but there is something on those real events, going to GDC. And I think that the path Paul and me chose for KeokeN is, Deliver Us the Moon was a great first step, I would say. And
Great starting point.
Great starting points, yeah. And I think we're really building upon that in a broad scale of like doing things better. For one of the examples is we're in an office that we used to have carton window plates against it, and that's not the case anymore. Also to make the environment a little bit more inspiring, making sure that people feel as much as it possible, by the way, now because we have COVID. But
it was funny though, because there was the office that we were in, we had, let's say, this cardboard instead of curtains or whatever, blinds or something. And there was somebody coming in the office and like, why don't you have curtains? And it's like, the curtains are in the game. The curtains look beautiful in the game, not here.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's also because I think after the really tough period we had, we went to a different office, very I would say regular or normal,
corporate,
normal, and it wasn't. Honestly, it sucked. Sorry, I didn't like it. It was in a couple of like rooms, and somehow, and that's what
a nice stepping stone.
It was again a nice stepping stone, but I kind of wanna. That's what I also not like about COVID now. I wanna work with the people we chose to work with, not to not see them. I mean that's the whole reason I was working with them. So, and as much as we can manage that, and I mean I'm really proud of where the team's going. So.
Yeah, and it's weird to me for when you talk about like the next projects and what you want to do with that. The retrospect is always that everything can be better and that you can improve on things. But I remember just kind of sharply remember somewhere in my mind there was a period or a moment in development of Pine that I thought, this is the best thing I'm ever going to make. Like, how can I ever improve on this, right? And that's mainly at the start. If you're talking about that valley, it's when you're at the high peak, and it's like the concept starts. And that made me a bit wary because the new project I'm much more excited for. And it's like, it's going to be really cool. But then I think, is this still like pretty mediocre and can I still do better? Probably, I don't know. Like, we'll see that. But that's the part of experience. Like, there's so many things you just can't see before you start it. And yeah, that's an interesting growth you do as a company. Just building on that experience, and things will almost automatically get better. That's super strange.
I would even say, Paul, that the changes and the improvements even go as far as like, knowing your taxes correctly, even more correctly than we did before. I mean, even that makes the company more healthier.
Yeah,
true.
And we were talking about it as well. I said, like, if you compare it to your happiness, this is a thing.
Nice
so
one.
even if you had the cardboards against the wall and we were on the shitty laptops and you need to wait for all these builds happening and we didn't have the right computers and lighting. And even if you have that, it doesn't make you happy. It makes it maybe more convenient. It maybe makes it something to be proud of, definitely, but it doesn't make you happier. I was as happy as we started at the kitchen table. So is that something that you had as well, that you experienced?
Yeah, like I said before, it's very relative. We started in a super small office, but that was the biggest freedom I've ever felt when we got that 20K, right? Because we were here doing what we love and getting paid for it, even though it was barely anything.
Yeah.
But the office was also really fun. I have very fond memories of that. It was like 20 square meters. We were in there with like 5 or 6 people. It was crazy small, but that was fun. That would have been a health hazard. It definitely now, but then again, back then it also was. But then, you keep growing, and every time you have fond memories of what you're doing, and you keep that happiness alive, I think. And like you said, it's just more convenient, but also the responsibilities grow a little bit. So
Definitely.
If things go wrong right now, I think I would have more trouble with it than I would have back then, because there's just much more on the line, right?
I think they said like, now's the time that you just do not look back anymore. Just move on. I remember once there was, I think it was Oliver, someone from the industry was.
For Kern.
Yeah, he was. He told me once, like, Koen, if you have a publisher and they're really interested, just if it's okay, just sign it. You'll never look back. And to some extent, it feels that way a little bit. It's like.
Yeah, and I think it should somehow, like, you're taking risks every now and then, and that's fine. Like in that way, I guess we have a relatively short sort of period in which we look forward, because with the new project, we have the decision, like, are we going to keep the costs as small as possible so that we have a bigger chance of recouping again?
Interesting.
Make a new one, or are we just gonna ask for what we really need, including all the sort of expanding the team and stuff like that, just to have the best 2 years of our lives and make an amazing product. And I guess with that, you take the risk that, it could go wrong a bit more quickly if you ask for 2 million rather than 500,000 or something.
Yeah.
But is it worth it? And I think if you probably have the same, but I really have an itch to make something really great. So if you have that itch and there's no way around it, then I guess you always go for the last option, which is how are we going to make the best thing possible, and we'll see afterwards.
Yeah, I know as much as the things we do today are going well on, I see so much going improved in comparison to Deliver Us the Moon. I can still say that the challenges and the things we learn are going to be different. They're going to be on different aspects. They're going to be on different places and not in the
Different
same
level.
different levels. And maybe the mistakes of you used to trip over are not the ones you trip over.
We
And-
trip over different ones now.
yeah. So and there is a mixture, I think, if you balance it correctly, and you of course there's going to be mistakes, and of course there's going to be things there where Matthijs, you and me will be talking like, God damn it, what the hell are we doing here? But that's and at some point, because I can't call myself professional on this.
No.
Yeah, I have huge imposter syndrome problems.
Yeah.
I guess my age also doesn't help. I look like I'm still in kindergarten, so that I once joked, like I was walking around Gamescom with Koen, and I said, Koen, probably people are thinking you're walking with your son here. Having a father-son day at Gamescom. But,
Oh man, that time, man, was amazing. I mean, I look back at was it 2000? It was 2019, man, where we sat in that restaurant and just saw the thousands of people walk by. I mean, that's a long time ago for my.
It's so
in my
weird
feeling.
to have people next to you that you don't know without a face mask like that.
Oh yeah,
I even have that feeling when I watch TV shows now. People shake hands. It's like, what are
Yeah.
they doing? You start to get that weird vibe. Yeah.
I actually wanted to take the opportunity for people to, because we have to kind of round up.
Oh, yeah, because the evening clock, right?
Yeah, we are under a clock, but maybe if there's people that want to ask questions, you can do so now. I did saw a couple people. Let me say, Martijn was in the chat. I
That's
see.
nice. But about the age thing, so I look like 16 as well, and they still ask my ID if I want to buy some alcohol, but it's fine. It's actually a great way to be underestimated that way, because then
I guess, yeah.
I believe it's more of a something that helps you in business as well. Or you look like a brat, like, well, what an arrogant prick, little brat, something like that. Or it's like, hey, it's funny, like a fresh young wind.
Yeah, I guess, and I see it on, like, when you're lobbying with governmental stuff, like, councils and provinces to get some money or something. I see that they really like having young entrepreneurs as well. Like, it is a fresh wind in that sense. They're kind of done with all the old white men with white hair kind of vibe. So yeah, it helps sometimes. But
There's someone in the chat that's Digitimini. Says, "Hey Matthijs, I'm a big fan of your work.
oh,
WTW is awesome."
that's with the winds. I think that's our puzzle game. I don't know where they know that from, but
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks.
Paul, CHM asks, and actually I see Palentos in the chat. That's a long time ago.
Nice. Good to see you, man.
Paul should grow a beard if you want to look older.
I don't want to look older, so that's why I'm shaving it always. This is great. I'm great in this place now.
Yeah. Maybe slowly to round it off. Let me see. Yeah, of course, I think because the communities around the games are the ones that... Because that's going to be a thing, Matthijs, when you release your next game. There is not that kind of like grind for people that want to play your game. It's like there is a set base of people that will know you and the studio and are looking forward to it. I am as one of them. But... and I mean, if that's, that's a really important one because communities... We build up, and at some point they're gonna enjoy the next one.
I see you guys as the golden standard for that because ever since the Kickstarter, you've always done so much community building, also with the streams and right now, I mean, with these podcasts and then you have that audience that is super strong. I mean, we have a Discord and stuff, but we never had that focus that you did. And I think that's really commendable, and that will really help your sales on anything you do next. Yeah. But yeah, for us, we have a little bit of that as well. Hopefully, quite a lot of people who are interested in what we're doing next after Pine. A lot of people understand we're not doing anything like a sequel or something, so that's going to be helpful. But yeah,
yeah.
Very curious, though.
Yeah.
I'm very curious
Yeah.
what that is.
yeah.
What you're doing.
I'll show you something, but not on stream.
No, I know. I know.
Yeah, it's cool.
We're in a similar situation, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, honestly, I can say a little bit about it, is that as much as we are a very open studio, as much as possible, and as much as we were in the beginning, I do, at some point, stuff is really going to matter in, you're not only accounted for yourself, it's also other people's interests and other people's risks. And then I was like, oh shit, it actually that's when you feel like, oh my God, I'm turning now, I'm being like grown up and all, and like shit.
Yeah, in a way, I think it's also a bit of a shame almost that I kind of see it as becoming a bit more corporate, which is a necessity. But for Pine, we realized that the only way to get people to play this is if we start screaming it from the rooftops from the very first moment. So we started a development blog. We did that every week for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that got a lot of attention, and it made us share something every week about the game and the development. So that got people really invested. But right from the start with this new project, I realized we cannot do this again because you'll be shooting yourself in the foot way too much if you're starting to talk about platforms, for example, and then PlayStation comes around and wants to deal with you. Well,
yeah,
already sort of spoken about it and talked about the Linux version or whatever. So I don't know, it's getting more dangerous, and I'm trying to find a balance because I really love that open vibe, right?
Yeah.
That you can talk to your audience and share everything you're doing, and it's super nice. And on paper, it almost seems like there's no reason not to do it, but yeah, in practice, it turns out you got to be more careful as you grow up as a company.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we had many, because that's the thing with streaming. We did that for a lot of times, and at some point we kind of lost it also due to development pressure and things that we wanted to really focus on the things we do first. But also it's so nice to kind of like talk to them about it, and that's why we have these podcasts now that we can talk to the community, that they see we're still here, we're out here, we're doing something, right, Paul? We're doing something.
Right. It's a replacement of streams, you mean, right? Not talking about a specific game, but more generally.
Also, it's very interesting since our network has grown so much that we were like, well, I think it's also a good place to talk with the network. I mean, I'm sure, you have a very similar situation to some extent, not a similar game, but there's also people we know from like big studios, and I have never worked at one, so they can tell us multiple stories about it, for example. And
we love to act like fools on streams for the games that we make, because we actually make a quite serious game, and then have to balance that out with some more fooliness of us. I think that's great, but then again, we said like we should do this more regularly, but these things take a lot of planning and stuff to do, and green screens, and we said, okay, of course, we need to run a company here, develop games, and this is a little bit more generalize that we can talk to the network, give everybody a podium like you, and kind of like wing it and see if there's interesting stuff that comes out of it.
Yeah.
And I think it does.
It's like always these chats are super nice and also to listen to as a dev, because I think just the experience teaches everyone so much. On that note, though, I think Koen brought up maybe a cool last topic, which is how do you ensure as a studio that you don't stagnate or that you don't get idle in terms of knowledge? Because like you said, at some point, like for all of us, almost all experience we have is with our own studio. So we have to take it from these types of talks and from dev stories that get shared, like how other people do things and how other people approach things. And then there's obviously the way of hiring people with experience in different places and more experience preferably than you have. But how do you guys ensure that? Because before we also had conferences, that's a nice way to share knowledge. But yeah, that's sort of on hold right now.
This is one way of it, to talk with you and to talk with other people from the industry. I do think it has to do with kind of the role. And I know that if we play ourselves out of the company, so we hire the people that take over our roles, we instantly become a little nervous and we start to create purpose for ourselves. And that little purpose starts to create little projects. And we say like, you know what, let's try a little bit of that. And then we say like, okay, put a few interns there. And then you start to create something.
I recognize it when the really boring stuff is on my table. I'm like, whoa, did I delegate that much shit already? Like now I'm doing this shit. Yeah. And to some extent then I know I want to do something else or I want to, and so it's through like figuring out or slowly getting spots out there that like, okay, that can be run by someone else.
You delegate it.
So you give opportunity to people in your studio. That's one. Second of all, I try to talk to as many indies as I can on a weekly basis. Like, even though if it's just a couple of words, like, hey, how you're doing? How's things going?
Yeah.
It's listen to the team itself, because if the team grows, there are a lot of people, even for example on a maybe more an accountancy kind of a discipline, even they have sometimes brilliant ideas. That's and true, like you say, of course, we need to execute on those ideas before they become words. But
maybe talking more publicly on events or to students is something, although this is weird because I know that you also have to do something yourself. So you give yourself up, you're going to apply with like a talk or something. But usually I'm like, yeah, whatever. What do I need to talk about? But what do I know? But at some point there's like a million things I can say something about, like publishing or budgets or development or teams or whatever. But it's you have to do it sometimes. I think we did actually, that was Daniel, by the way. It's not even me, but we did a very cool ray tracing one with, I think it was Unreal Engine and NVIDIA. I mean, that's something I just really love because that's actually technically something that's development rather than, there you have that business story again.
Yeah, that's what I mean as well. Like we can talk about this, for 2 hours like we did now.
Yeah,
it's obviously high level and on a business level. But for example, for the new game, I was plotting the planning and the budget together, that sort of stuff, and I realized like I don't really know how to approach this on a scale like this. So you start talking to some people, but yeah, it's quite difficult because I don't have experience from before from another AAA studio I can draw on, and none of us in the team really do, except for maybe 2 people. So that's it's interesting to me. And one of our goals in that is just hire people with more experience than us to get them to teach us, basically. Hire people you're intimidated by is what Pixar always says, and I think there's really something in that, like not physically, but just on the professional level.
I agree. So always like hire people that are better than you. That's what we always try to do and delegate it to them. But then also I have to say, kind of the projects that we are working on, it's before we knew even it was becoming a thing. We said like, are we already making this? We already started, and the starting point is very blurry to me. Yeah, because I can pinpoint it at one point to say, we started it somewhere there, and then it's like, no, it's actually a little earlier. It's like, we started talking about this here, and I find it very weird. I think it's also some sort of in our nature to continue or something?
Yeah, it's a mixture. Also, I see some knowledge in our partners. So there's a lot of partners we work with that done this over and over again. And
But also the people like our level designers, they said, you know what, if we do like this and we and then I said, wow, like there's already something.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
I think that little prototypey phase where it feels like a little playful, like we are doing nothing, that already is kind of starting whatever project that you're working on, and it
Yeah,
becomes a little
that's
easier.
true.
we have to round up, Matthijs.
Yeah, we have
Um,
to run home. Well, I'm home, but you have to run home.
I would say thank you for being with us in the stream.
Me.
I mean,
Maybe any tips for any if there's people watching and they
Or
are
any
they're
last
thinking
words?
about starting a game company or starting maybe anything creative in this world. Do you have any tips for them?
Don't do it.
yeah, I want to say don't do it.
No,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, ideas are cheap. That's always one I keep coming back to. Try to think more about the execution, and don't underestimate how much you can do yourself in this day and age with all the tools that are available to us, and just try to make something yourself. There's one sort of I guess pet peeve of mine, which is Dreams for PlayStation 4 is not being played nearly enough because you can make literally
Yeah.
anything in it.
Oh yeah.
Amazing tool for anyone who feels creative and just wants to jot something down. And it's a community building thing where you can even, grab things if you don't want to make it yourself and try things out. But that's fantastic. People get hired through that. So if you're into game development, you don't know how to start with Dreams. Try it.
I honestly have to confess I was a little scared. It was becoming too easy. I was like, oh fuck, really?
I know the feeling. But
No.
then again, the complexity of our projects, I guess,
Yeah.
it's going to take a while. But yeah.
Yeah, no,
great.
it's still it is rather easy, by the way, through it, but it's very good choice.
Yeah.
Dreams.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Matthijs.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. And good luck running home quick enough.
Yes. Guys from the stream, thanks for watching. Paul and me will return next month with I think another
Interesting guest.
Yeah, definitely a new guest, maybe even a new I don't know. We have multiple projects or subjects to talk about, but we really just let us know, by the way, what you think of this, because
Just tweet us if you say like, hey, I really like this, or I really dislike this, or I really want to change this, or can you talk a little bit more in depth about this subject? We want to do this every month, so keep us posted.
yeah.
Good.
Also, again, thanks for Matthijs being here. I mean, lovely guy. And Paul, thank you for being here as well.
Yeah, thank
With
you,
me.
Koen, for being
Yeah.
here.
It's amazing.
And thank you, Daniel, for being behind the knobs, and
You're
Julia for arranging this whole stream very nicely.
Yeah. So, see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh.